Go ahead.
Alright, so today I'm going to talk about the Smite Super Regionals, which is an esport competition that's coming up soon. It's basically the preliminaries, semifinals before the final World Championship that's going to be in January. So first of all, what is an esport? An esport is a competitive gaming competition in which players compete for prize money. Usually it's it's a team of some sort, and yeah. Now Smite, much like other sports, runs seasons, just like a lot of the other esports. But because I'm talking specifically about Smite, I'll go in more detail. So Smite runs 3 splits, and basically what a split is a 10-week increment where every team from each region plays against each other. I guess they would play about 10 matches by the end of it. And they play against each other, and then whoever's in the top 3 moves on to the next split, while the rest of them have to go against each other to see which teams move on as well. So we're in the last split right now. It's coming to an end in a couple weeks. So a couple other esports, Dota 2, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Street Fighter, and Smite. These are a couple pro teams, and most of these, except for like 2 of them, are actually in this fall split right now. So we've got Fnatic, Envious, Enemy, Titan, Ninjas in Pajamas, Stellar Lotus, Cloud9, Team Solo Mid, and Epsilon. And right now, Envious is the top in North America with 19 wins to 3 losses, and Epsilon is like 20-1 in Europe right now. So both of them are doing quite well, and both of them will most likely be moving on. So what is Smite? Smite is a free-to-play MOBA, and for most esports, most of them are MOBAs. There's a few others, Counter-Strike being one of the other ones that's more of a shooter. Most MOBAs are, for the most part, they're 3 lanes in which you try and push towers to get to a main objective in the very end in the middle. They're very team focused. There's going to be 5 players on each team. And the difference between Smite and a lot of the other MOBAs out there is in Smite you play as gods and goddesses from different pantheons, such as the Chinese, Egyptian, Greek, Hindu, Mayan, Norse, and Roman. So in Smite there's different classes, and this is important to know when you're thinking more about how everything works in the game, especially on a more professional level. So you've got assassins. They're high damage. They're a melee, which means they have to be close range. They have a really low health, which makes them super vulnerable. They do physical damage, which it doesn't really matter whether they do physical or magical. That just basically tells how they scale as they go with what items they buy. And their skills are heavily damage based, but usually for one single target, meaning that these are the people that are going to go in and they're going to pick one person off, run away, come back later, pick another person off, and hopefully not get themselves picked off. A good example of that is Loki. He's Norse. Pretty sure we all know who Loki is. Next up, we have warriors. Again, melee attack. They have lower damage just because they're warriors, but because of that, they have a lot higher defense and higher health. They do physical damage, and a lot of them are based on utility, which basically means they have a very wide skill pool, which involves them doing things like healing sometimes, but mostly doing things like blocking off people or pulling people inwards so that the rest of the team can actually do stuff about them. An example here is Guan Yu, Chinese Pantheon. Next we have hunters. All the hunters are ranged. They're high damage basic attacks, which basically means that their skills aren't what make them high damaging. It's all about just the regular click attack. They have low health, just like assassins, but because they're long ranged, it's a little bit harder to take them or pick them off, unless of course you're ranged as well, or you can come up behind them. Again, they have a little bit of a utility-based skills, which usually means they have some kind of dodge to get out. And then they have a little bit of damage. Neith here has a heal. It's not very good, but it's only for her. She's an example of a hunter. Next we have mages. Mages are completely utility and damage based. They have all kinds of, they're all different for the most part. I say ranged, but sometimes melee because there is a few melee ones, which makes them really interesting. They're very high damage. They're low health, lower than both the assassins and hunters in that if you can catch one, there's not a good chance of them getting away. And they do magical damage, and an example of that is Raw. And finally, we have Guardians. Again, it seems the magical damage guys can be both melee or ranged. They have really low damage, but super high defense and health. And their job is to control the crowd, basically making sure that there's not too many people from the other team in the fight. You're basically trying to keep everyone out so you can pick off certain people without getting the rest of your team killed. So they are, example of that is Ymir. Now, here's where those all come into play, and that's in the positions. So when you're playing Smite, at least in Pro or playing Conquest, if you wanted to just play around with what the pros do, there's the 5 different positions. So the first position is solo lane. It's the shortest one on this side here, and by short I mean the towers here are the closest to each other. This can be played by any of the classes I mentioned before, but it's mostly played by warriors, guardians, or assassins. And basically what they are is they are the wild card. They're the ones that once you start fighting in a big group team fight, they're the ones that come in and are basically there either as an extra damage or an extra tank of some sort. They're there to help out in whatever way the rest of the team sees fit. The middle lane is right here, right in the middle. This is where this is where a mage usually goes. Basically what the mid lane is meant to do is to basically try their hardest to push, because the middle lane is the quickest to get into the enemy's base. But at the same time, they're here to guard these 2 points so that both the left and right side can come in and take those, which is just experience, which basically lets you get to level 20 faster than your opponents. Then we have the ADC, which goes in this lane, which is usually called the duo or the bottom lane, but in this picture it doesn't really look like the bottom. In the duo lane, you have the ADC, which is usually a hunter, but can be a mage. And basically, they're meant to be the highest damaging player on your team. They're meant to be the one that picks up the slack, which means ADC, which is attack damage carry, which basically means they need to carry the team once they get to their max level with all their items. And then also in that lane is the support. They're usually a guardian or a warrior. Basically, whatever the opposite of the ADC is, they should be the opposite in damage. So if the ADC is a hunter, that means they're physical, which means there should be a guardian there because they're magical damage. And then the last and probably the hardest role to fulfill is the jungler. And their area is everywhere in between the lanes. They need to roam around this jungled area, and they need to come up behind and help set up basically ambushes on any of the sides so that the middle people or any person in the lane can get a kill and then thus go up. So the super regionals. So what the super regionals is again, it's the semifinals. It's what's coming up now that it's coming up soon. And it's going to be from November 17th to the 22nd. And what the super regionals is going to be is it's going to be 6 teams from the North American bracket and 6 teams from the European bracket. And it works just like a regular semifinal. Everyone's going to play against each other in a single elimination bracket, I believe it is. And this is the deciding factor of who is going to go to the finals this year. And the finals will only have 5 teams. So it'll be 2 from the European and 2 from the North American, and the last one will be a wild card of whoever proves that they can do the best. Whoever basically comes in third, and then the last two third places in the the super regionals are going to fight each other. The total prize pool for the super regionals is a little under 500,000. 500,000, which means that's a fair bit of money, and basically it's going to be the top 5 teams that are actually going to be getting that money. Everybody else is going to get smaller, like a lot less than that. But then from there on out, they'll head to the Worlds. And last year, the total prize pool for the World Tournament was 2.6 million. And
For one team.
for the first place winner, they won. I think it was 1.3 million, and then the rest was divided between the other 4 teams that came. They decided they're actually going to cap that so that this year they can only win $1 million, just because they realized how ridiculous that was of amount to have one team and then have the rest of the 4 basically get like $1,000 or like just nothing compared to everyone else. In general, though, esports brought in about 200 million last year, and that's through all tournaments and all of the other games. So again, Counter-Strike, Dota 2, League of Legends, all together they made 2 million. And by 2020, they're expected to bring in $1.8 billion in money, and that's both in prize money and what they get for viewership, because to view super regionals, you've got 2 choices. You can buy a ticket and go to Atlanta this year, or you could buy yourself a pay-per-view, just like a lot of other major events. And all that money goes to basically next year, how they can run it, as well as promoting and merchandise, because a lot of these companies, a lot of these teams have a lot of merchandise that you can get, just like Cal Cole over here is wearing his Toronto stuff. You could wear a Fnatic t-shirt. And